It was a cold October morning when the scream shattered the silence of Red Oak, a quiet town tucked away in rural Pennsylvania. A jogger, pale and trembling, stood by the side of the old irrigation ditch, pointing down into the frozen mud. The body of Angela Merritt lay twisted, lifeless, her clothes torn, blood soaking into the earth beneath her. Her eyes, wide open, stared at nothing. Within an hour, yellow tape sealed the area and cops swarmed like flies. Michael Holloway stood nearby, frozen in disbelief. His hands were stained with blood, not hers, but from trying to revive her when he stumbled upon the scene. It didn't matter. To the police, the evidence was too convenient. He was arrested that same day. The town turned on him. Headlines branded him a monster. His daughter, just 6 years old, watched as her father was dragged away in handcuffs, screaming his innocence. But no one listened. What if he was telling the truth? What if everything had been planted? Every clue, every witness, every shred of evidence? And what if the person who did it was someone he trusted more than anyone? Don't just watch. Be part of a community that uncovers hidden truths. Subscribe now and turn on the bell so you never miss stories the world tried to bury. These aren't just crimes. They're warnings, revelations, and justice long delayed. Join us before the next truth disappears in silence. Before the headlines, before the trial, before the cell door slammed shut behind him, Michael Holloway was just a man, 32 years old, forklift operator at the local lumber mill. A quiet soul, soft-spoken, never one for drama. He loved old blues records, Sunday morning pancakes, and the soft laugh of his daughter, Emily. To his wife, Laura, he was a rock, steady, reliable, maybe a little boring, but the kind of boring that makes you feel safe in a world full of storms. They lived in a modest 2-bedroom house on Willow Creek Lane, the kind of neighborhood where mailboxes never got knocked down, and everyone waved, even if they didn't know your name. Michael didn't ask for much out of life. Just to clock out on time, kiss his wife goodnight, and watch his daughter fall asleep with her teddy bear clutched to her chest. He had dreams, of course. Maybe one day opening a small auto repair shop with his best friend Derek Kane. They'd been talking about it since high school. They already had a name picked out, Holloway and Kane Auto Works, spray-painted in red on an old garage wall out back. But something had shifted in Derek lately. He'd started showing up late to work, short-tempered, distant. Michael chalked it up to stress. Life had a way of kicking you sometimes. Still, a part of him worried, especially after that strange argument between Derek and Angela Merritt at the gas station, one he'd overheard but never really understood. Then came the anonymous letters. 2 of them, unsigned, slipped into Michael's mailbox late at night, both saying the same cryptic thing: not everyone is your friend. He didn't know what to make of it. He showed Laura. She laughed it off. Probably kids messing around, she said. Michael wanted to believe her, but something felt off. The night before the murder, Michael stood in his driveway, staring up at the stars. Emily had just gone to bed. Laura was folding laundry. And for the first time in a long time, Michael felt a chill that had nothing to do with the weather. He didn't know it yet, but the life he loved was already gone. Michael Holloway never wanted much, just peace. He craved stability, a chance to give his daughter a better life than he had. After years of growing up in foster homes, bouncing from one temporary bed to another, he had finally built something that felt permanent, a home, a family, a purpose. His biggest dream? To open that small auto shop with Derek Kane. It wasn't just a business idea. It was a legacy, a way to leave something behind. Michael had even started saving, stashing cash into a locked-in box in the attic. He believed in loyalty, in hard work. He believed Derek was like a brother. He believed in people, but people were starting to disappoint him. Derek had been distant for weeks. He cancelled meetings, missed shifts, and when they did talk, there was a strange intensity in his eyes, like he was carrying something heavy and didn't want Michael to see it. Michael asked once, "Everything all right?" Derek just grunted and changed the subject. Angela Merritt, on the other hand, was a storm. Charismatic, sharp-tongued, and always surrounded by rumors. She worked part-time at the diner and had a reputation for knowing too much about everyone's business. She and Derek had history, something unspoken, possibly romantic, possibly more. Michael didn't pry, but when he walked into the gas station that night and caught them arguing, he couldn't ignore it. Angela's voice was low, but urgent. "I told you I wouldn't cover for you again. You're on your own." Derek noticed Michael watching. The tension thickened. "Everything good?" Michael asked. Angela walked away without answering. Derek forced a smile. "Just a misunderstanding." Michael didn't believe him, but he didn't press. Not yet. That same week, the anonymous notes continued. The third one arrived on a torn piece of envelope. "Open your eyes before it's too late." Michael started locking the doors earlier than usual. He stopped leaving Emily alone in the yard. Laura noticed the change. "You're acting paranoid," she said one night. "Maybe," he replied, "but something doesn't feel right." Then came the strange noises, shuffling footsteps by the garage late at night, a knock at the door with no one there. The tin box with his savings. Gone. He searched the house, confronted Laura, asked Derek. No answers, no explanations, just silence. And then the accusation. Angela had been found dead. Michael learned about it from a neighbor banging on his door, yelling, "They're saying it was you." "What are you talking about?" "They found her this morning, behind the irrigation ditch, and the cops, they're looking for you." He didn't run. He had nothing to hide. He waited on the porch, holding Emily close, heart pounding in his ears. The police came within the hour. Guns drawn, no questions asked. They pushed him to the ground, cuffed his hands behind his back, and read him his rights while his daughter screamed. In the interrogation room, they laid out the evidence. A torn piece of Angela's scarf in his garage, blood on his boots. A threatening message typed from his computer. Michael was stunned. "I didn't even see her that night." But the detective didn't blink. "We have witnesses. We have motive. You were angry about the rumors. You were afraid she'd ruin your family." "Rumors? What are you talking about?" The detective leaned in. "She told someone you were cheating on your wife. With her. She said you got violent when she threatened to tell." Michael was speechless. The lie was so complete, so rehearsed, it almost sounded real. But it wasn't just the lie. It was the way it had been built, piece by piece, with surgical precision. Someone had orchestrated this. Someone who knew his life intimately. Someone who had access to his home, his computer, his garage. He thought of Derek. He thought of the argument. He thought of the notes. And he felt the ground beneath him begin to crack. That night, in the holding cell, Michael sat alone, his hands shaking. Every sound echoed like thunder. The clink of keys, the buzz of fluorescent lights, the distant cries of other inmates. He didn't cry. He didn't scream. He just stared at the wall and whispered to himself, "Who did this to me?" Because deep down he knew this wasn't just a mistake. This was personal. Angela Merritt's body was found just after dawn, sprawled face down in the reeds behind the irrigation ditch that marked the edge of town. The first frost of the season had settled on the field, leaving a glistening sheet over everything, except her. Her jacket was torn, her hands scraped and bruised. Blood had dried along her temple, trickling from a blow to the head, and a deep wound at her neck suggested strangulation. It wasn't just a murder, it was a message. The jogger who found her was inconsolable. She'd taken the trail every morning for years. "I thought it was a deer at first," she sobbed to police. "Then I saw her hair. I saw her face." Detectives arrived within minutes. But even before they began the search for answers, a name was already circulating among the officers: Michael Holloway. Within an hour, he was in custody. At the station, they laid out the so-called evidence methodically. The scarf, Angela's, found stuffed behind a box in Michael's garage. A smear of her blood on the sole of his work boots. Emails printed out with threatening messages. "If you ruin my life, I'll ruin yours." They'd come from an account linked to Michael's home IP address. Michael sat silently, listening. It was like hearing someone describe a version of himself that didn't exist. When they told him the murder weapon, a tire iron, had been found in a creek 2 blocks from his house, he almost laughed. "You're serious?" he said. "You think I did this?" They did, and so did the media. The town of Red Oak had never seen a murder like this. Angela Merritt wasn't a beloved figure, but she was a part of the community. Her death, and the possibility of a killer living among them, shook people. It was fear that did it. Fear and the comfort of a clean explanation. Within 2 days, the narrative was locked in place. "Town father turns killer," read one headline. "Jealous rage ends in murder," read another. TV trucks lined the streets outside the courthouse. Reporters hounded Laura at home and followed Emily to school. The Holloway name became synonymous with betrayal and horror. The trial began just 6 weeks after the arrest. Michael's court-appointed attorney was young, overwhelmed, and clearly underprepared. Key evidence was never challenged. Witnesses were never cross-examined. The prosecution painted a vivid picture. Angela had threatened to expose an affair. Michael panicked, and in a moment of fury, he killed her. They had no proof of an affair, no eyewitnesses to the crime. But they had just enough circumstantial evidence and a jury that didn't want ambiguity. They wanted closure. The verdict, guilty of second-degree murder. The sentence, life in prison without parole. When Michael heard the word guilty, he didn't cry. He didn't shout. He just stared at his hands as if they no longer belonged to him. Laura collapsed in the courtroom. Emily, clinging to her grandmother, screamed, "Daddy!" They took him away in chains. From the inside, prison was another world. Grey walls, flickering lights, the constant echo of voices, and the stench of sweat and hopelessness. His cellmate, a former gang member, sized him up on day 1. "You don't belong here," he said, "but nobody cares." Michael spent the first year in survival mode, watching his back, eating in silence, refusing to let the rage take over. He missed birthdays, anniversaries, first days of school. Letters from Laura came less frequently. Then they stopped altogether. He learned from another inmate that she'd filed for divorce. Emily wrote only once more at age 10. "I miss you," she said, "but Mom says you did something bad. I don't know what to believe." That broke him. Time became a blur. He lost track of how many Christmases passed. He taught himself to read legal texts in the prison library. He filed 3 appeals, each one denied. Guards mocked him. "Still think you're innocent, Holloway?" they'd sneer. "You must really believe your own lies." Then on the 19th year of his sentence, something changed. A letter arrived. No return address, no name, just a single line of text written in black marker. "You trusted the wrong person." He read it over and over. At first he thought it was a cruel joke, but there was something about the handwriting, sharp, deliberate, that made his skin crawl. Someone wanted him to know something, and whoever it was, they knew the truth. That letter became his obsession. He started replaying everything in his head, every conversation, every strange glance. He remembered the night before Angela's death, how Derek had shown up at his house unannounced, how nervous he seemed, how he'd insisted on using the garage bathroom instead of the one inside. He remembered the way Derek hugged Laura goodbye a little too tightly, how he lingered in the doorway, eyes darting around the room. Then he remembered something else. The email account the police traced back to his home. He'd never used it, but Laura had, and so had Derek, once on Michael's computer, when his phone had died and he needed to send a work email. He felt his stomach drop. The evidence, the scarf, the blood, the email. It hadn't been found. It had been placed, deliberately, carefully, by someone who knew how to get in, someone who knew what would be found and when, someone who wanted him gone. Michael clutched the letter in his hand until his knuckles turned white. He wasn't crazy. He wasn't paranoid. He'd been set up, and the person who did it was still out there, free, maybe even watching. Michael Holloway had nothing but time. 2 decades inside a concrete box gave him plenty of that. But now, for the first time in years, he had something else. Direction. That anonymous letter wasn't just a spark. It was gasoline poured onto dry wood. He needed answers. And he wasn't going to stop until he found them. It began in the prison library, where Michael combed through every piece of public record on his case. Trial transcripts, police reports, news coverage. He read it all with a different lens now, looking not for what was there, but for what was missing. He noticed details others hadn't. For example, the scarf found in his garage was never tested for fingerprints. The tire iron had no usable prints either, just blood. But whose idea had it been to search his garage in the first place? According to the record, it was an anonymous tip. The source was never identified. How convenient. He filed a request for the original 911 calls from the morning Angela was found. The dispatch log showed one curious entry. A second call made just minutes after the first, reporting suspicious activity behind the diner where Angela worked. That call was never followed up on. It had come from a prepaid cell phone. Burner, untraceable. He wrote dozens of letters, hoping one might land in the right hands. Most were ignored. But one day, a response came from an unlikely source. Rachel Monroe, a freelance journalist who'd covered Angela's case years ago. She remembered Michael. More importantly, she remembered the inconsistencies. Rachel agreed to meet him, on the record. Sitting across from him in the cold, fluorescent prison visitation room, she slid a recorder onto the table. "Tell me everything," she said. Michael did. Over the next 6 months, Rachel dug into the original case with fresh eyes. She started with Derek Kane, Michael's former best friend. Derek had vanished from Red Oak shortly after the trial, telling co-workers he needed a fresh start. He'd moved to Maryland, changed jobs, and now worked at a car rental agency under a slightly altered name, D.C. Holloway. Rachel's heart stopped when she saw it. He had taken Michael's last name. She visited his workplace undercover, pretending to rent a car. Derek didn't recognize her. But as they spoke, she noticed something. He had a nervous tic, tapping his thumb against his thigh. Just like Michael described, Rachel requested access to court documents and police evidence storage, but some files had gone missing. Entire folders were misplaced. Her gut told her someone had covered something up. She filed public records requests and tracked down old witnesses. One of them was Janice Foster, a waitress who worked with Angela. Janice was reluctant to talk, but after some persistence, she admitted something she'd never told police. Angela had confided in her about someone harassing her, not Michael, but Derek. He'd shown up at her home late at night. He'd threatened to ruin everything if she went to the cops. Why hadn't Janice spoken out? Because a week after Angela died, Derek came to the diner. He looked right at me and said, "You keep your mouth shut or you'll end up like her." Rachel recorded the conversation. She took the evidence to an attorney specializing in wrongful convictions. Together, they filed a motion for a post-conviction hearing. The judge was skeptical, but agreed to review the new material. Meanwhile, Rachel found something even more damning. A printed email found in Angela's apartment, dated 2 days before her death, signed M. The prosecution had argued it was from Michael. But Rachel discovered that the IP address linked to that email was not Michael's home. It had originated from a public Wi-Fi network at a cafe 2 miles away, where Derek was known to hang out. The handwriting on the anonymous letter Michael received in prison. Rachel compared it to an old birthday card Derek had written to Emily when she was 5. A handwriting expert concluded it was a 94% match. Still, the DA pushed back. Circumstantial, they said. Too little, too late. Rachel wasn't deterred. She contacted Laura, Michael's ex-wife. Laura was hesitant at first, ashamed of having believed the worst. But when Rachel showed her the evidence, her hands trembled. "I let them turn me against him," she whispered. "I let him rot in there." Together they confronted the detective from the original case, Carl Winston. He was retired now, but when Rachel asked why the second 911 call was ignored, his answer was chilling. "We had who we needed," he said, shrugging. "Guy fit the narrative, and we were under pressure. Town wanted blood." It was the closest thing to an admission they'd get. Finally, a break came when Rachel tracked down a former friend of Derek's, Corey Sandler. Corey had done time for fraud and was eager to talk. Over a beer and a small bribe, he confessed that Derek had once bragged about pulling off the perfect frame job. Said he got rid of 2 problems with 1 blow. "2?" Rachel asked. "Angela," Corey said. "And Michael." That was it. The motive. Derek had wanted Angela silenced and Michael out of the way. Maybe he wanted Laura. Maybe he just wanted to destroy the one man who trusted him completely. Whatever the reason, he'd succeeded, but not for much longer. Rachel handed everything over to the Innocence Project. With their resources, they uncovered even more: phone records, surveillance footage, financial inconsistencies. Derek had made a $5,000 cash deposit the day after Angela's death, unexplained, untaxed. After 20 years, the truth was clawing its way out. If this story is stirring something inside you, if it makes you question how many others are still unheard, take a moment to like this video and share your thoughts in the comments. Your voice can help bring light to the dark corners, where truth is still waiting to be found. The post-conviction hearing was scheduled on a grey Monday morning, 20 years and 5 weeks after Michael Holloway had first been sentenced to life. He sat in his orange prison jumpsuit, hands shackled, heart pounding against his ribcage like a drum. This wasn't just another appeal. This was it. The moment the world might finally see what he'd known all along. He was innocent. Rachel Monroe sat behind him in the gallery, her laptop bag full of documents, transcripts, voice recordings, every shred of evidence they'd managed to pull together. Laura Holloway was next to her, wringing her hands, eyes red from nights spent reliving a nightmare she thought was over long ago. The prosecutor opened with practiced confidence. "Your Honor, we see no compelling reason to revisit this case. The evidence of guilt remains substantial." But then Michael's attorney stood up, voice calm and precise. "We disagree, Your Honor. What we're about to present will change everything." Over the next 6 hours, a parade of witnesses took the stand. Janice Foster spoke about Angela's fear of Derek Kane. Corey Sandler told the court about Derek's drunken confession. Rachel played a recording of retired Detective Carl Winston admitting the case had been rushed, that the town wanted blood, and they gave it what it wanted. But the turning point came when Rachel produced a folder labeled Exhibit 12. Inside was a forensic report, freshly dated. The scarf, the one used to tie Angela's wrists, had finally been tested for DNA. Not just Angela's, not Michael's, Derek Kane's. Silence fell over the courtroom. The judge, eyebrows raised, asked for clarification. "You're saying the DNA on the murder weapon, long believed to be Mr. Holloway's, is in fact Mr. Kane's?" "Yes, Your Honor," Rachel said from the gallery, with a 99.8% match. But it didn't stop there. Rachel's team had obtained surveillance footage from a pawn shop near the scene of the murder. The footage had never been submitted into evidence. It had been archived on a faulty hard drive and overlooked. But now, restored and enhanced, it showed Derek Kane walking past the alleyway that led to the ditch at 2:13 a.m., the time of Angela's estimated death. The prosecutor tried to object, but the judge waved him off. Let's hear him explain this. The final blow came when Derek was subpoenaed and forced to testify. His lawyer tried to fight it, but the court insisted. Derek walked into the room in a suit and tie, visibly sweating. He locked eyes with Michael, for the first time in 2 decades. Michael stared back, unmoving. On the stand, Derek fumbled through denials. "I wasn't there. I didn't kill her. I don't know how my DNA got on that scarf." But under cross-examination, the pressure cracked him. When asked about the fake email, he slipped. "I only used Mike's computer one time." "How do you know it was that time?" the lawyer interrupted. I mean, And then it happened. Derek broke. On live record, voice shaking, he muttered, "She was gonna tell everyone. She said she'd ruin me. I didn't mean to kill her." Gasps echoed across the courtroom. Michael's entire body went numb. Derek was immediately taken into custody. The judge called a recess, and when court resumed, he made it official. In light of the overwhelming new evidence, the judge said, "I am vacating the conviction of Mr. Michael Holloway. Effective immediately, he is a free man." Michael didn't move at first. 20 years of hope had dulled the sharpness of belief, but then he looked at Rachel, at Laura, at the bailiff unlocking his chains, and the realization hit. He was free. Outside the courthouse, cameras flashed, reporters screamed questions. Michael stepped into the sun like a man resurrected. His first breath as a free man tasted like gasoline and rain, but it was the sweetest air he'd ever known. Rachel stayed by his side, shielding him from the chaos. Laura approached, tears falling. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I should have believed you." He nodded. "It's okay," he said. "It's over now." But deep down, he knew it wasn't really over. 20 years were gone. Emily was grown, living in another state, unsure whether she wanted to see the father the world had taught her to fear. Michael didn't blame her. He visited Angela's grave. He left a single lily and stood in silence for 10 minutes. Then he whispered, "I forgive you. I hope you found peace." Because in the end, Michael knew Angela hadn't meant to destroy his life. She'd been a pawn. The real monster had finally been unmasked and caged. But justice didn't feel like justice. It felt like ashes. Still, for the first time in 20 years, Michael Holloway didn't feel like a number. He wasn't an inmate. He wasn't a headline. He wasn't a killer. He was a man, a father, a survivor. And now, finally, he was free. Freedom for Michael Holloway didn't come with fanfare or celebration. It came with silence, the kind of silence that sits in the bones, the kind that no one else can hear. After his release, Michael moved into a small studio apartment paid for by a non-profit group supporting wrongfully convicted individuals. He had no credit, no job history for 2 decades, no savings, no possessions beyond a box of court papers and prison letters. His name had been cleared, but his life had been erased. The hardest part wasn't starting over. It was realizing how much had moved on without him. Laura had remarried. Emily, now 26, had built a life of her own. They met once in a quiet diner on the outskirts of Harrisburg. She sat across from him, a stranger with familiar eyes. "I don't remember much about you," she admitted. Michael nodded. "That's okay. I never stopped remembering you." They talked for 2 hours, not about the trial, not about Derek, about books, about music, about how she liked her coffee. It wasn't closure, but it was something. Michael never asked her to forgive him. He just wanted her to know he never stopped loving her. Whether she believed it or not was her choice. Rachel Monroe wrote an article that went viral, 20 Years a Prisoner, the story of Michael Holloway. It triggered national outrage. News outlets demanded investigations. Public figures called for systemic reform. But nothing moved fast. Derek Kane eventually accepted a plea deal, manslaughter, obstruction of justice, and perjury. He was sentenced to 18 years. Michael would later write in his journal, "He got less for destroying a life than I did for trying to live one." Michael was offered compensation by the state, $75,000 per year of wrongful imprisonment, a total of $1.5 million. But no amount could replace the birthdays missed, the hugs unshared, or the 2 decades of time that vanished behind steel bars and cinder block walls. He used part of the money to start a foundation, the Emily Project, named after his daughter. Its mission, to help wrongfully convicted individuals rebuild their lives. Counseling, housing, job training. He didn't want revenge. He wanted purpose. When asked by a reporter how he found the strength not to hate, Michael replied, "Because hate is what got me there in the first place. Someone else's hate. I wasn't going to let it live in me too. He spent quiet mornings reading in the park. He volunteered at a mechanic's garage, teaching teenagers how to rebuild engines. Every now and then, he'd give a talk at a university about justice, faith, and survival. Some students cried, some looked away, but all of them listened. One professor asked him, "What would you say to someone who still thinks you might have done it?" Michael smiled gently. "I'd say I hope they never find themselves in my shoes, because if they do, they'll learn real fast how dangerous a lie can be." His story became more than a tragedy. It became a warning, a symbol of how fragile truth can be and how easy it is to bury a man beneath fear and assumptions. But it also became something else, a testament to the human spirit, to resilience, to the quiet, painful work of healing, and to the enduring power of hope, even when the world has forgotten your name. What would you do if everything you loved was stolen because of a lie? If one day you kissed your daughter goodnight, and the next you were branded a killer? Michael Holloway's story isn't just about one man. It's about a system that failed. It's about friendships that betrayed, truths that were buried, and a voice that refused to stay silent. Now, we want to hear your voice. Do you believe justice was truly served? Should the people who helped cover up the truth be held accountable? How many more are sitting in cells right now, innocent and forgotten? Leave your thoughts in the comments. Your voice matters more than you think. Share this video with someone who believes in second chances, and if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. We're telling stories that need to be heard, stories that expose, that inspire, and that demand change, because one man lost 20 years. But maybe, just maybe, his story can save someone else's.